really grateful Cora came to our studio now it seems like about 5 years ago, and I look forward to welcoming you back again in person, but you are back here in this beautiful platform of Zoom. And thank you so much for taking time to join us this evening. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Cora, and look forward to being in dialogue tonight. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mariam, and the beloved community. I'm excited to get to share this Sunday evening. I'm actually really kind of excited about this weird forum that we have of online classes because it's connected me and reconnected me to so many people around the world from traveling. So I just sort of made some notes about what I wanted to talk about tonight because I haven't been in your studio, and so people don't really know why I would be talking about global diversity because they don't know who I am. So I wanted to just first start with talking about why I might have something to say about diversity and yoga. I was born in Hong Kong and grew up living in different parts of Asia and then Europe and then the USA, and then was educated in Europe and Australia and the USA, and just have taken that and added it into my careers when I was working as a banker and in the fashion industry, and then into yoga when I started traveling and teaching. So I started teaching around 1994, and I started teaching internationally to Canada and Mexico in the late 90s. And then I did my first sort of bigger international yoga retreat in Indonesia in 2001. It wasn't a great year to book a yoga retreat because things happened in 2001 and changed our world. So I continued to teach for 3 years, tried to teach in Java, not in Bali, but in Java for the next 3 years. But we had 9/11, and then we had the Bali bombings, and then we had SARS. And I ended up spending a bunch of time in Indonesia with no students, right? And so what was interesting is that I was able to connect with local people and actually teach local people at a time when I didn't really know, they didn't know that much about yoga, and I didn't know that much about teaching yoga in Indonesia, in my father's homeland, and I didn't know how to speak the language, so it was an interesting time. And then since then, I've taught workshops and teacher trainings throughout Asia, Thailand, India, Italy, Vietnam, Laos, Mexico, Costa Rica, Malaysia, Bhutan, Cambodia, Croatia, like all around. So I've taught in a lot of different international locations, and I haven't just been bringing people, I bring them sometimes, but oftentimes I will be teaching local people and teaching in local studios and teaching a local community. If I'm working in a spa or a retreat area, I love to teach the local, like the staff, because that gives me an insight into the culture. So Mariam asked me to share sort of some things that have happened, things that I have felt that have created that connection around the globe, especially with the conversation about race and diversity right now, inclusion, equality. It's so big in our minds, it's really at our forefront. But I want to talk not just about the diversity in the US, I really want to talk more about the diversity that is spread across the globe. And what does that diversity mean? Because diversity spreads across racial, cultural, ethnic, religious. There's just so many parts of it, and we have to understand that each individual is unique, right? We say that in yoga, everyone is individual, but really understanding how the individuation and uniqueness of each culture makes us infinitely human, and that there's shared beliefs too that we can have, and recognizing those shared beliefs and perhaps individual differences and being able to hold all that together. So diversity to me, right, are going to include in my students, in the way that I see the world, all types of things, not just your race, but your religious beliefs, your socioeconomic status, your age, your shape, your political beliefs. I don't agree with everybody's political beliefs, but I may need to be open to others to have conversation, because that means inclusion. So if we're having a conversation about diversity, that does mean inclusion, right? And inclusion means that I'm going to be able to hold and ensure people of all different places and walks of life are also included in the conversation. And that's really easy when they agree with my beliefs and my understanding of the world, but it's not as easy when I don't. And if yoga is to teach us that, we really need to hold that deep inside. Equality is another part of diversity. So equality means that we have to ensure that there's an equal opportunity for the lives and talents of every individual who they are, that no one has a poor opportunity of life chance because of their birth or their belief or their disability or where they come from. But we know the world's not like that. It's just, that would be a world that I would love to see one day. But the only way it's going to happen is if it starts with me. And when I could teach yoga around the world, it felt like I was connecting with other people, right? Other people in other communities that were different than me. And what that brought to me was new ideas and experiences. I could learn from other people. I could learn about the history of their countries. I could learn about the history of themselves. It's a perspective that I believe is important for us to be a better human being, to have a broadened perspective of different people from different walks of life. So I had the luxury of being able to travel and teach and travel as a kid and be able to meet people from different walks of life. But that's not always available. But what's available now is the internet, which I didn't have when I was a kid. I would just go someplace and go try to find things that were interesting to me. Now, or before, when we could travel, we went with like a list, right, of the things that we wanted to do and the places and even the photographs that we wanted to take. And we had this list as though the world was just ours, for my photo album or my memory bank. And COVID has kind of taught us that we don't have that luxury. It will shift, and we can miss that. But perhaps we can turn it around to look at how can we use this time perhaps to learn about each other. I really want to promote the idea of inclusivity, equality, respect amongst all people. We say that that's what the values of yoga is. But really, if we're to become global citizens in this world, we need to have exposure to other people and other experiences and other beliefs. We need to have our eyes open. We need to work and learn from people of different backgrounds. We need to have a more comprehensive understanding of the world and different points of view. I also think that in so many ways that having a diverse world, having a diverse classroom, having a diversity in my friendships and my workplace, it really helps communication and creativity, because we're learning from other people and like a different way of seeing things. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, how can you think that? But on the other hand, maybe it's just like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. And change is so difficult. So sometimes it's just like, oh, what are you talking about? Can later, with digestion, turn into an opportunity. I wanted to share some sort of funny things that have happened to me, kind of funny and not funny and interesting things around the globe. But one of the things that recently came up for me was during the COVID times. Because I don't know about you, but back in the spring, I didn't really know what day it was at first. It was a big blur of, I think I'm waking up, and I think, well, it's a day, and I don't really know where I am, but, what day is it? And that was the day when we looked at the TV, and they'd say, today's Wednesday, right? So I know it's Wednesday. But so what I did was I decided to just do, for me, do a 10-minute yoga class on Instagram Live at 10:30 every weekday, Monday to Friday. I had no idea who would show up. I'm just going to try this. 10 minutes. I can come up with something for 10 minutes and they can turn it off. So it was interesting because it became this community. It was like I just was throwing out, like, I didn't even know that what Instagram Live was. I didn't even know that people looked at it. I was kind of playing with it. And all of a sudden there were my students, my yoga students who might have been missing class or wanted to know, was I going to repeat what I taught on Tuesday? But then there were these people that I didn't even know who they were. And what happened was the coolest thing. I was telling Mariam about this when she asked me to talk about this. Oh my God, this is like the coolest story I have to tell you. So I'm on my Instagram Live. I have no idea who's watching. And I end up connecting with 15 to 20 Iranian female yoga teachers and practitioners. Okay, now, call me stupid. I just didn't know that there was this thriving yoga community in Tehran and in different parts of Iran. I had no idea. And so I started just sort of, when I look at their, handle, it looks like, oh, wow, so it must be that this person told this person. But then they started talking to me, because on Instagram you can chat, right? So they'd start talking to me, and then afterwards sending me messages. And it basically turned out that all these things I didn't know. Yes, there is a vibrant yoga community in Iran. They are not mixed gender. Women cannot share classrooms with men. So only women can teach women. It's also very private. And so all of a sudden, I am teaching women in Iran different ways of helping your knee in different parts of Iran. And then somebody from Croatia would dial in, and then there was this guy that was showing up at all the classes, and then I was doing classes, and I had donation classes, and then, some of the Iranian women would come on, and then these other guys would come on. And then for a while, it was okay, yeah, donation classes, but you notice when somebody's not donating, all the time. So it's 5 or 6 classes later, I'm thinking, I know it's donation, but I'm just wondering what's the deal with these people, nobody can pay me from Iran, even $5, right? No. We have a sanction. Credit cards don't work in the US. They couldn't come to my class. They couldn't pay me if they wanted to. The other guy that was always there, he lived in South Africa. There's no PayPal Venmo with South Africa. There's the things that we take for granted, that you can just exchange energy, money, all this stuff. It's not so free in the world. I've known that because you can't get on the internet. You things are blocked in different countries. But I didn't think about, oh yeah, well, wow, that means that a whole bunch of information, education, experience, connection is missing to great parts of the world that could connect us, that could make us feel that we are one, that we are together, that we are, one global, committed, connected world. But it took COVID and these weird Zoom, Instagram Live classes for me to just get a view into something that I thought I had kind of a good view. I mean, I've been teaching for 30 years. I've been traveling. I've lived around the world. I thought that I kind of had some idea of stuff, but boy, did it show me something. And, then it made me think about all those opportunities that I've had where I've taught in different parts of the world. The time when I was stuck in Indonesia, all those, 3 years, 28 to 30 days at a time in one location in Java. And so I was teaching one day. I said, okay, I'm going to teach the security staff. It's all the guys, that are protecting us. And, there are all the guys with the rifles that are protecting us around the property. So I'm going to teach them yoga. I don't speak Bahasa, Javanese, Indonesian. They don't speak English. So the guy that was in charge, I said, okay, so let's figure out how to say inhale, exhale, left, right. I can identify this or that. And so I'm teaching warrior. Great pose to teach a security staff, right? So I'm teaching warrior, warrior 1, warrior 2. And I'm talking to Silo and say the security, the head, and I'm like, so what's soldier? Like what's warrior in Bahasa? And he's like saying soldier. I looked it up and I asked someone else. It's like no, that's not right. Governor, lieutenant, general, like all these words. I was like, no, that's not doing it for warrior. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I keep on seeing all these like Arjuna cafes and Arjuna, call centers. It's like, oh, Arjuna, and bang! Immediately they were like, it was kind of like, oh yeah, like this, and then Arjuna. No, Arjuna. He's a hero. He's not a soldier, right? And that little thing connected me with these guys. So the next years I went back, like they were all like waving to me from the fields, like popping up, scaring the crap out of me, when they jump up out of the rice fields because they were protecting the perimeter. But it was like, oh, hey, Cora, Ibu, how are you, right? And it was like that one thing they remembered. It was a way to connect, right? So these small things. I posted something on Instagram just the other day about, I found some old photos and I was up in the high Himalayas and some crazy idea to bring people up there. And I ended up teaching a class where local people ended up coming in. And again, I didn't speak the language. I didn't speak Nepali, Hindi, Tibetan, like whatever they spoke in the high way up, 12,000 feet place. And I did it mostly by gesture and, volume or whatever. And I remember just at the end of class that this woman, this girl, who was a local girl. I mean, this is near the China-Tibet border. So they are like filled with spirit. I mean, like it's the Himalayas. It's like deep juju land, right? It's like land of original juju. And I remember after class, this young girl, she just did like namaste and then like bowed and touched my feet. I mean, it was like, oh my God. Like, that's such an honor. Like, I'm teaching yoga in the land of yoga, and someone thinks that, like, they got something. I mean, wow, how cool is that? Like, that was worth the price of admission to those high hymns, right? Because that connection right there was, again, an experience of, like, person to person. Someone that I didn't understand really all their culture. They didn't know mine. But the language is still of connection and love and cooperation and kindness. All those, groovy things. And then there's some not so groovy stories. Like I was teaching in Malaysia, and my friend didn't tell me until like 2 days before I was getting on the airplane to Kuala Lumpur. She said, oh yeah, by the way, yoga's illegal in Malaysia. So, like on your visa, I mean, when you check in, like, don't say you're teaching yoga. And I'm like, what do you mean yoga's illegal? Like, what does that mean? And she said, well, you can get arrested and put in jail. Okay, so getting on a flight in 2 days to go to Kuala Lumpur, where I've never been, and being told that the thing that I'm going to do to get, like, once I get off that plane is something that I can get arrested for, is, like, does not make that, like, really long, 26-hour journey, like, so wonderful. Plus, I'm thinking, like, oh my God, like, what if I do get arrested? I mean, I don't even know like what to do, right? But it was fine. As it turned out, just don't use Sanskrit. And I was teaching Chinese people. So they weren't Malaysian, so it was okay. If I was teaching Malaysian people, it was illegal, but if I was teaching Chinese people, it was not illegal. And then a Malaysian woman came in and I was like, oh my God, I'm afraid to even say anything. But again, so the rule is do not chant, do not om, do not use Sanskrit. Okay, I use Chinese medicine. I teach Chinese medicine, so it's like meridians. Okay, meridians, they're fine, move that meridian, kidney meridian, oh, large intestine. So then that was interesting, like, okay, I don't want to get arrested, right? But I want to share this thing we call yoga. So here's the language I'm going to use to share that. I have lots of crazy stories, so many, but like one that my husband said, you have to share this one. Okay, because it's U.S. This is cultural diversity. I'm a girl from Hong Kong, right, who grew up in like Asia and Australia and Europe, and like this is another country. I'm the immigrant. I'm not the first generation. I am the immigrant. So I moved to Nashville. I mean, I've been teaching in Nashville for like 15 years, but because of some life circumstances, I was getting divorced from my first husband. I decided to move to Nashville. So, my girlfriend has a studio. It's great, great, great. Living in Nashville, I'm Chinese. There's not a lot of Chinese people in Nashville. I'm Buddhist. There weren't that many Buddhist people in Nashville in the South at the time that I was teaching. Not in the late 90s. Not outwardly so. Okay, so I'm in Nashville, and I look, and I'm thinking, so what days should I teach class? What class should I teach? And I see, oh my God, Wednesday night. There's nobody's teaching on Wednesday night. Natch, I'm going to teach a class on Wednesday night. And then my friend is saying, yo, you're teaching on Wednesday. I said, yeah, well, I've noticed in town Nashville, there's it's different. We're talking 90s. Okay? There's no classes on Wednesday. And I was like, really? How come? It's Bible study day. Okay, it's Bible study, Cora. People don't come. And I was like, oh yeah, right. So, see, cultural diversity for me is different than cultural diversity for you. Global diversity for someone like me might be different from somebody like you. And so we have to sort of shift, what does that mean, diversity, in the bigger picture of the globe and our heart, right? How can this expand into the globe? So, globe, another thing that COVID has shifted, the globe. We can't travel around the globe. So, great, Cora, you told us all these groovy stories, and I'm sure you could tell us more, but I'm kind of pissed, I can't travel anymore, so what about that? Well, okay, we can't travel anymore, but also when we were traveling, I am guilty myself. I became a traveler who just wanted to touch it and have a memory. Because I've been to a lot of places. So yes, I experienced things, but then I started to actually get more, as the years have recently, I found that I'm becoming more interested in the places than the people, right? Like a place, like a gorgeous temple or a gorgeous mountain, and I want to go there and I want to, feel the rock and smell the sky, but not the person. Not the people, whereas before I would research the people, the religion, the thing, and it was kind of became more of the real tourist of the place, right? As though almost it becomes the place is a emblem of this travel. And here is a real example of that. On Instagram, there's that one photograph, you've probably seen it, a gazillion yoga teachers, they're at the gate it's called the Gate of Heaven in Indonesia, it's in Bali, and it's this really massive gate, and then they're usually doing some really Om Shanti pose, or, back bend, or some, hold hands, whatever, it's the Taj Mahal kind of a thing, right, it's this gate, and then there's this mirrored lake, and they're beautifully reflected in the thing, and it's this gorgeous photograph, and you just can't believe it, and you want to go there too. That temple is not on a lake. That temple is actually on the top of a hill that's kind of brown and half green and half mud, right? That photograph is taken with a mirror underneath the iPhone to get the picture of you looking Om Shanti, with the gates of heaven, and then they can fix the iCloud, the clouds, and they can Photoshop in all your clouds and everything, but they get that mirrored thing by just a mirror. It's actually like a dime store mirror underneath the iPhone, but you just do it at this right angle, and it creates that. So, on this meeting, I went to look up the significance of the temple, that Gate of Heaven, because when I used to go to Indonesia, it wasn't one of the tourist spots. I've never been there. I remember the first time I thought, I was like, wow, what temple is that? Where is it on the water? So it took me over an hour searching online to get any information other than how to get there, how to take the picture, how long the wait was, how hard the climb was. There was no information about the significance of the temple. That is part of the 9 directional temples of Bali. What does it stand for? Why is it important to the people locally? Do you see that even the internet is following our searches? So the searches became about the imagery of the global traveler me, right? Looking groovy in Oshanti, and not the people. I mean, this is like one of the major temples of the Tantra in Bali, which is like the only Hindu Buddhist part of Indonesia. The rest is predominantly Muslim, except for Borobudur, which is Buddhist. So it's just like this window into life that we kind of miss, because all everybody knows is like, that's a great Instagram shot. That's like the greatest Instagram shot you could have, don't miss it when you go to Bali. Like, don't miss that one, and also the water temple, because you can have the photograph. There were people like standing there. I mean, I've seen photographs of like the same photograph of a group of people, because there's a photographer there getting the spiritual shot of you looking spiritual and wet. Okay. But what does it mean? So, perhaps now, with the time that we have, because we can't really travel in the same way, perhaps now we could actually maybe research, like if there's a place you want to go to, maybe research the culture. Maybe look something up about if it's Costa Rica, if it's Montenegro, if it's, Cambodia, but like, instead of just the best tour and the best restaurant, which kind of was what was filling up our searches, what does it mean? What's the history? What's the ethno-demographics of the people? What is the best local food that maybe I don't want to try? But like, there's things that are so interesting. I mean, we were so interested in Anthony Bourdain traveling the world, mixing with the local people. But then we go and we just like go down the list of like Anthony Bourdain and Fodor's and Lonely Planet. But now perhaps we can take our own time and look at the world as this, like, potentially this place that I can explore, and then because of the internet kind of dig into education, the education before the experience. I mean, I got a job teaching in Thailand, my first time teaching yoga in Thailand, just because I said to the guy at Yoga Journal, he said something about my business card, and I said, oh, I would never use this business card in Thailand because it shows the bottom of my feet. That's disrespectful. And he was like, oh, you can teach here because you actually understand that would be disrespectful, right? And it was just because of my awareness of the culture. So that awareness of culture can actually connect you and can begin conversation and can, which leads to potentially collaboration, communication, all these good C words. And, perhaps this time that we have now can allow us to really explore what does this world mean? What does this world mean? Like, who am I in this world? How do I see myself? How can I become more creative? How can I become more aware of what's out there? How can I broaden my worldview? Right? How can I expand this that I call my belief system? Because we all have a belief system that is biased in our upbringing, our society, our family values. And if you don't think so, just get old. Okay, because I'm like literally turning into an old Chinese lady. I mean, I'm like turning into, my landscape guy even said, like, are you going to turn into that old Chinese lady with like pots, of like orchid plants in your garden? Yeah, I'm turning into that old Chinese lady. Because I can't help it. That's what I was brought up with, like that ultimate is my worldview. It's what I grew up with. It's my family. It's like, the annoying people that share my last name. I mean, that I have to see sometimes. And the ones that I miss that shared my last name that are gone, my ancestors. My grandmother, who made me so Chinese. Like my cousins always say, how come you're like doing all that Chinese stuff? Because she did it, and it was cool. I thought it was interesting. I wanted to know her. So I learned more about me because I got to know her and her traditions and her food and her everything else. And so most of us in America are from somewhere else. So maybe that's looking, we got the Ancestry, the 23andMe, we've got all that to like, explore. And that's so exciting for people that maybe this globalization and diversity is that's what it is, that's like how I can contribute. And then what can I do? What can I do today, right? We're stuck here at home. We can't do this, we can't do that, we can't connect, we can't hug each other. But I can expand me, and I can look at myself, and I can do inquiry, self-inquiry. I can read about places and things that I don't know about. I went and really studied Islam after 9/11 because I just thought like, wow, I don't know anything about this. Let me study. If you teach yoga, I really highly recommend, don't just jump off. I know sometimes getting on, people are rushing. Don't just jump off. I sort of have this, what I call a coffee clutch thing after class. And I stay like 15, 20 minutes and just kind of chat with people. My husband used to say, like, I thought your class ended at a certain time. You've been in there for a while. Because I'm chatting with people and checking in. And coffee clutch actually means informal visit with friends. We need that more than ever right now. Informal chat connection with friends. So if you teach, please connect. I also check in because my students are important to me. So in fact, I texted 2 people I haven't seen for a few weeks in class. I know they're busy. It's busy. I just wanted to make sure that they were okay. These particular people I know live alone, and I know that yoga gives them a lot of benefit. They've talked to me about it. So I just checked in, just to say, hey, how are you doing? Is everything okay? And both of the women really expressed how genuinely that was helpful with them today. Just a text, like from your yoga teacher, just saying, hey, how are you? But just, hey, how are you? I see you. I'm thinking of you. You're in my heart. That's about all we can do, right? You do that for your grandmother or your kids. Just check in. Hey, how are you? And that check-in could be offering a class on a free social media. It doesn't have to be yoga. It could be like how to make almond milk. It could be how to fold your sheets. Everybody wants to know how to fold a fitted sheet. I know how to fold a fitted sheet. But, like things like that are just connecting. And you know what? You're going to feel like a fool. You'll feel like, oh my God, that's so stupid. So what? Is it bad to be stupid once in a while? Is it bad to just be willing to fall? Because maybe that'll teach us resilience, the ability to fall. Because you know that saying, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Resilience. We need that now. So I wanted to open up to some questions or conversation and not just yammer at you. Are you guys willing to participate in conversation?
Yes. What's the question, Cora? What's the...
How about what do you think that you could do? Like, do you have any ideas? Like, what makes you feel connected? What is diversity? What is global diversity to you? Does that give you any ideas? Does that make you think about the ways that you might have connected in the past to others that you didn't even know about? Are you willing to look at that? Are you willing to expand? What does that mean to you? To any of you? I most of us are from somewhere else, even if it's our parents, right? Because in the U.S. we are not as homogenous. We're just not. So we're usually coming from, and sometimes I have parents from different areas. But what does diversity mean to you? And how does that, what does inclusion? Does that mean like in a yoga class? What does that mean? What does that mean? Like, what does that mean for us as yogis? What does it mean for you?
One thing that you and I we were talking about earlier, and I don't know if it came up tonight, but this idea of being global in our perspective, in seeing who's in front of us and the stories, like the learning that we do from the stories and how valuable they are. And I'll just I'll just kind of share, because I was noticing some of the trends of, and I found it it was a learning for me when I worked with the layer of the racism and the people of color and classes that are kind of tuned to this cultivation of awareness. And there were stories that were being pulled from generations back.
Oh, right.
and and I never thought about that, but I was realizing when I was talking to these individuals that were taking these classes that they were connecting to these stories more than the stories that we give in the Indian tradition.
Yes. Yes.
And that for me has been like the challenge of like, well, let me expand my diversity of the storytelling.
Well, and storytelling is a lost thing. I mean, storyteller, I mean, that was like this sacred person, right? Like the storyteller was somebody who held a lot of wisdom and sort of brought everybody together. And I was talking to you today about that. I was reminding me that, you know, one time I was doing a training and I was saying, oh my God, I did this thing at the beginning of the training where I said, I opened it up and said, you know, please tell me your name, where you're from, and why you want to learn restorative yoga it was. And I had no idea. I mean, there were 45 people in the class, so yes, it would take some time, but I had no idea it was going to take like the whole session. And it was because people wanted to share their story. And I didn't cut them off. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I did another fail as a yoga teacher. Oh my God, people are so pissed at me now because, you know, I like wasted, do you see, judgment, wasted their time. We sat around listening to people's stories. But the emails, the conversations that I had with people after that particular weekend, it was like a weekend training, I couldn't believe how meaningful that was to people. I mean, and there were people in that classroom who had, you know, children who were ill, okay? People who had lost, like everyone in their lives. People who were suffering from like really debilitating illnesses. And being even willing to share that and have the safety to share in a community is a lot of openness, you know, and trust and connection. And again, I mean, this is something, you know, I'm not saying like to do, I know that there's sometimes like trainings where you're like, you know, corporate trainings, you're supposed to like, you know, tell your most secret things that people can hold it against you. I'm not saying that, right? But just to share story. Story connects us. And I mean, that's why stories survived, isn't it? I mean, fairy tales survived. Fables survived. All those types of ways that we share wisdom. Also, don't you remember it? Way easier to remember. Way easier to remember a good story than something else you had to memorize that was supposed to mean something. I know that's really very difficult for a lot of Western practitioners in yoga, is the whole like saying the Sanskrit, learning a chant, remembering these words that don't make sense because there's, you know, syllables and letters that are put together that don't make sense. So what does make sense? Like, how can you find a common ground? I have this thing that I've always done with people from other cultures when I'm teaching in teacher training. I have a whole list of the Yoga Sutras translated into like 100 different languages. Not the commentary, just the translation, okay? So that I have it in Japanese or in Senegal language, I mean like in different languages. And that's because I've had students and they really have difficulty with concepts. And so it seems like, well, why don't I, instead of trying to translate it from like a language that none of us speak to a language that only I speak, to try to explain it to a language that you don't speak, seems that, well, why not cut out that middle thing and why don't you read it in your language? That's helped a lot. I mean, I had a Japanese student who just was so ecstatic when I gave her a Japanese translation of the Yoga Sutras, because it allowed her to then understand in her language, so that the actual words were not being translated, and she could think about it herself. Because it's not for me to just feed you, like, that joke about, you know what university study is. It's the professor's notes going to the student's notes with no learning in between. Right? So I don't want that. I wanted her to comprehend it, like, in the heart, like, to experience it. And that's really helpful. My teacher, Eric Schiffman, used to always tell this one helicopter story. It was like the same story that he used to explain how the spirit really, we have to trust our inner guidance. And he used to always just change this one line in the story. And it had to do with, like, getting into a traffic. You know how, like, you're going somewhere, you're driving, and then, like, the voice inside you says, oh no, go this way. And you're thinking, why should I go that way? It's like, not the shortcut, this is the right way. But then, like, the voice is kind of there, and then, you don't go that way and you find out that there's a traffic jam, or you do go that way and you find out that there was a traffic jam. Well, he would change that word, traffic jam. In Montana, he would say buffalo stampede. Okay? It's a buffalo stampede.